Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be pulling apart this Saginaw power steering gearbox. I've never done one of these things before, but don't let something like that frighten you. If you've got some tools, patience, and preferably a factory service manual that shows you what it looks like, all of the pieces, something like this is not hard to do. So let's get to it. Got it back from Media Blast. Looks fantastic. Admittedly, I probably could have taken this bracket off of here before I had it cleaned, but I was kind of lazy and it was a last minute trip, so I'll finish taking all the pieces off of it, then we'll rebuild it. Still a little bit of crud in there that needs to be cleaned out. Well, that's kind of fun. When was the last time this thing was apart? I bet younger viewers don't even know what that is. It looks like this gear is a Model 708. This is a factory service manual, and I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing this level of work, to pick one of these up. I think they're about 50 to 80 bucks, somewhere in there, but they are worth every penny of it. Now that it's mostly drained, I'm going to pull this rag joint off of here and take the pitman arm off so that we can replace the seals and probably bearings on both of those. Alright, I found the trick here. Take this square screwdriver and put it in here. Then I hit it with a hammer here and come back to the other side. And you can see it's moving. For those keeping track, 1 3/16, which of course I don't have. I've got 1 3/8 and I've got 1 1/4. I do have this 34 millimeter, which sort of fits. Fits well enough. I'm really surprised. I'm just turning this by hand and it's pulling it off. So I actually didn't need the puller at all. Okay, we now have everything off of it and we can actually start the process here. I'm going to start on the back, and it's got a lock ring that goes all the way around here. And you'll find there's a hole right here in the housing. You need to find this hole and then get the gap in this ring fairly close to it. You don't want it right at the hole, but you want it really close by, and I'll show you why. Get yourself something like this nail. The important part here is it needs to have a point on it, and you need it to be about the same size as this hole. Put it in there. See what it's doing? It pushes that ring out. That's why you need the split nearby. And then you can take a screwdriver and get it up underneath of it. Just waiting for this thing to come popping out and hit me in the face or something. And then that comes out. To get this out, we turn the stub shaft counterclockwise, basically till it hits the end point. You can use this. And now when I push it a little bit further, you can see it's pushing that cap out. Let's see if a valve lapping tool will take it out. Just like that. Next, we want to remove this end plug here. This one is a hex. Looks like in the factory service manual, some of these might have just a 1/2-inch square hole in the back of them. The book recommends using a hammer and brass drift to loosen it, so I'm going to guess it's tight. Back in 1974, they didn't have these, so. And it was tight. This is the sector shaft side cover. It comes off next. You could just drive it from here. There's our sector shaft. Need to get it cleaned up in the parts washer to make sure everything's good, but I don't see anything obviously wrong. At this point, you just rotate this shaft here, and it'll drive this piston forward. You can see all of those. In order to change this seal, this piston has to come out. And if this piston comes out, these ball bearings come out. Now there is a special tool in the book. It's basically just like a drift that goes in here that probably holds them in place so that you can keep them inside this worm groove here. But I'm not going to worry about it. These things get assembled at the factory, so we can assemble it here on the bench. Just keep driving forward. Don't let this kind of thing worry you. This is the first steering box that I've had apart. And, you know, the reality is all I'm going by is what I see in the book. So we'll keep moving forward. The next thing we've got to do is pull out this adjusting plug here and the valve inside. Now there's a bearing in here that has preload on it that is set in inch-pounds. I think it's somewhere around 3 or 4. I'll have to go back and look at the book again. But the key here is the preload on this bearing is set by how far this is turned in. Now, if I assume that it is correct right now, then what I want to do is I want to just make sure that when I put it back together, it's in the same exact position as it is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it. I'll mark this plug all the way up across this lock ring and then onto the housing. I'm just going to use some enamel paint to do that with a Q-tip. When I put it back together, I know that that line needs to be, completed again. So I'll dry that off and then we'll take it apart. This plug has 2 holes in it. There's some sort of a spanner wrench that probably has 2 pins that goes like this that you can use to get it. I don't have one of those service tools, but I don't think it's that tight. This outer, I guess it's hex-shaped lock ring is really what's holding it in. So the hope is we can take this lock ring off and then this will turn out fairly easily by hand. So I'm just going to use a screwdriver and a hammer to try to break this free. This seems to be working. I put it face down so that the vise is just grabbing the lock ring, and then I'm turning the body of the gear, and it's turning. Once you have it loose, this comes off real easily. And then this plug, I think we can just use some needle nose because I don't have a special spanner tool for this. Yeah, that comes out real easily. Then the valve comes out, and we've got this thrust bearing in there, which was right there. And I think, yep, there's a thrust washer in there too. Try to keep things in order so that when you're putting it back together, it's a little bit easier to remember where they went. I now have everything disassembled, so I'm going to take all of these parts, at least all of the internal pieces, over to the parts washer and clean them out really well. Then we'll work on pulling out the bearings and seals and start replacing everything, put it back together. This adjusting plug assembly does come further apart. There's a thrust bearing and thrust washer in here to get it out. There's a retaining ring that you pull out. Looks like you can get a pick or a small screwdriver under here or here and pop that out. You can see there's a needle bearing right there as well. This kit that I have here, I don't think it comes with all of those bearings. Let me look. Yeah, the kit comes with the needle bearings, but no thrust bearings. So I'm going to get that one out of there, but we'll be reusing the thrust bearings. These are our two seals on the back side here, an oil seal and a dust seal. This dust seal is in pretty rough shape. You can see how it sticks out quite a bit. There's the new one. So take this snap ring out and we can get those out. Oh, that guy might be press fit, so I think we're going to have to come from the other side. Get a little screwdriver, get underneath this little cap. That comes out. Got this, I don't know what the heck this is, but and it's got a thrust washer and a thrust bearing. Again, I don't have a replacement. Take a look, make sure it's fine, but don't lose it. It's got a thrust washer on the other side of it. And we've got our needle bearing and this oil seal that have to come out. And we've got this O-ring that will also be replaced. That gets the seal out. Now I'll see if I've got a socket or something that fits just down inside here. We can drive that bearing out. This probably did not need to be replaced. It looks like it's fine, but the kit comes with a new one, so. And we just reverse the process. Needle bearings installed. Then our oil seal. Then the dust seal with this little bump facing outward. Everything should seat just below that groove for the snap ring. Kit came with a replacement snap ring, so I'll use it. On the back side, we've got to do that O-ring first. You can see there are a bunch of O-rings, so compare the old to the new on all of these. Next is a thrust washer and thrust bearing. And a thrust washer on the other side. And whatever this castellated looking thing is. And finally, this cap. And that's assembled. If you're wondering about my use of a brass punch or drift to put that together, that's what they use in the factory service manual, so good enough. All right, this plug is ready to go, so I'll set this assembly off to the side, and we'll move to the other bearing and seal in here. And just like we did on that adjusting plug, we're going to just flip it over and drive everything out from the other side. To get this bearing out, I'm just going to use this 40mm driving tool. I'll put a link down in the description to this. I use this kit quite a bit. It's got a whole bunch of different sizes. Basically just put it in here and whack it. There's the seal. And a second seal, just like that plug. And finally the bearing. Alright, we've got everything pulled apart. Next up, we'll get everything cleaned up and then reassemble it. We're getting a bit long for today, so I'll just call that the end of this video, and we'll do assembly as a separate one. Thanks for watching.